This season is kind of special because it's about a group of special people. Women who have exemplified what service is, women who have exemplified the things that we were raised and taught by our mothers. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, 8-time Emmy Award-winning journalist, my friend and partner, Mr. Maynard Eaton.
Hello again and welcome again, as Jim said, my partner said, welcome to Newsmakers Live. Women in the courts, you talk about power, talk about fear, never mind at home. But women in courts seem to have a degree of power unparalleled in political climate, seemingly. We have past examples like Judge Thelma Wyatt Cumming, and of course former Georgia Supreme Court Judge Leah Sears Ward. We also have to my left here Judge Wanda Dallas, the Magistrate Court in Clayton County, and to my right Miss Cassandra Kirk, the Chief Magistrate Judge in Fulton County. You guys know each other?
We do.
Very much so.
Really kind of come up together in the ranks, am I correct?
We have.
So we met in the Fulton County DA's office, and we've kind of been stair-stepping each other after that.
And it's interesting because Judge Kirk and I, we first were assistant district attorneys.
Right.
And I remember you back in those days, in the 90s, when you both started. Okay, right.
Was it tough then, or was it tough earning your stripes, getting your respect, climbing the ladder? Or was it like other folks talk about women struggling, breaking through the glass ceiling?
I think it was a little tough. I think that there's a perception of women, at least it was back then, maybe 20 years ago, the perception was that we were more, maybe more compassionate, and maybe that meant that we weren't going to be firm. But I believe that the same qualities that gave us an ability to be assistant DAs and then juvenile court judges, we both were Fulton County juvenile court judges, those are the same qualities that people need now. And so the things that we're seeing maybe as a negative, I think now are positives. The fact that we are compassionate, the fact that we look at the people that are in court and we see something in them, we see something as women, as nurturers, we see something that can be saved, that can be salvaged. And I think that gives us a kind of an edge on some levels because it's a natural nurture that's kind of how I look at this.
And so I would agree, but I would also say because we came through the Fulton County DA's office, we had an opportunity to be with Mr. Paul Howard, and Paul Howard took he took care in figuring out how to put those teams together. There were 100 attorneys there. It was not hard to find 5 or 10 people you could always bounce something off of, so you never felt alone. So even if you couldn't find a chief or you couldn't find Mr. Howard, there was someone else in the office that you could always use. And Wanda Dallas is the most compassionate person. She is the hardest working person I have ever seen, and I am so proud of her now to be the chief magistrate out in Clayton County. And the interesting thing is that most of the chiefs in the metro area, if not all of them, are all women. And so we have like a sisters club where we meet pretty much quarterly so that we are together and just supporting each other in what it means to be chief and what that role looks like, because that's not easy.
I'm saying, is that a good thing, or is that we all kind of been corralled and not allowed to go on to the Superior Court or higher court judges?
No, I don't think. I think it's a good thing. I think that as Chief Magistrate Court judges, I think we do this because we like doing this. We've had opportunities to maybe do state court or Superior Court. But just like Judge Kirk said, by the virtue of how we were kind of raised on some level in terms of being under that type of leadership as Paul Howard, it just has given us an ability to be more cohesive, to be a team. And that's important because how we look at the law, how we look at justice, how we look at, criminal justice reform, it's a little different because of where we started, and we keep up with each other. So the sister judges, we meet and we talk about the challenges that we're facing that are unique to us as women judges.
Judge Kirk, you're facing a challenge right now. You're running for re-election. Is that correct?
It is correct.
Why would somebody want to unseat you?
Those are the words I want to know. I don't know. But I can tell you, you are right. On May 22nd, actually early voting started today, I am asking the residents of Fulton County to vote to keep Kirk so that I may retain
I like that. Keep Kirk?
Thank you. Yes, sir. Keep Kirk. So I do have one challenger.
But as a judge, you're kind of restricted. You're kind of quarantined from doing certain things politically, right? I mean, you can't say but so much. Is that correct? Or am I wrong in that regard? as a judicial.
So, as a judicial candidate, we would expect that there would be a level of decorum that would equal who you are in the courtroom. And so that is what I have pledged to do, is to run a fair race. And so I intend to rise above the mudslinging that has occurred and just simply move forward and tell people in Fulton County that I am the best candidate because I am best qualified, that I am the person that has built this court from the ground as of 2014, and so that I am the person that should retain this seat.
And you won re-election last year, is that correct?
I did.
What are the politics of this seat, this
Right.
position?
Politics of it. Oof.
Is it political or is it judicial? Is it your legal qualifications or is it your political clout and moxie?
I think it's both. I think legal qualifications certainly play a role, but I think what happens is people look at what you're doing, and what's ironic is the more you do in the position, the more it makes other people want the position. They want what they perceive to be power. Because as chief magistrate court judges, we've got a lot that we do. We take care of civil actions, we do criminal actions, we do so much. We're the only court, magistrate court, that's 24/7. So in other words, we've got to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have judges that work every single day. So it may look attractive. We may make it appear to be or seem to be something
Yes,
that's
you look
easy. I mean, but it's not easy. It's a very difficult job to hold down. But I think the thing that keeps both of us in this is we have a touch with the community. I consider us to be the people's court on some
And so
levels.
one thing I want to add that Judge Dallas did not bring up is that every chief magistrate, no matter what county you're in, will appoint other judges. And so that's not true, except in the juvenile court arena. So the chief magistrate judges have an important role to play in picking those part-time judges and picking those full-time judges. And so it's important to know that those judges are the people that will eventually sit on Superior Court, will eventually sit in higher courts. And I was at a breakfast and I did not know that Judge Mike Boggs, who is soon to be Justice Mike Boggs, started out in the county he was from as a magistrate. So magistrate judges are a good starting ground, but it's a very important work that we do serving the community.
I know you're on a state, this is a state court position, is that correct? Or county or state?
County.
There are those who worry that our president is appointing or trying to name federal court judges that could, very conservative and very, could hold back much of you that you're trying to do as a people's judge. Are we fearful, should we be fearful, concerned about what's up the road from where you are?
Let me say this. I want to talk about Georgia, because what's interesting, in the 8 years that we've had this governor, we have had some amazing appointments. I've got to say that he's passed some legislation that shows. I want to talk about something, and I'm kind of going to take a little curve off here, but accountability courts. That is critical, and that's something that this governor stands by. And I'm not saying I'm not a party person, absolutely, but what I look at is the courts that have been created: accountability courts, drug treatment courts, DUI treatment courts, veterans treatment courts. Those type of courts, mental health treatment courts, where we see people that come into court and there seems to be a problem. There seems to be a reason why they're committing these crimes, and they don't deserve to go to prison per se. So what happens is, with accountability courts, we're able to put them in a different track so that there's more treatment. It's a more treatment-oriented case.
And that's new. That's brand new.
Well, no, I think it's been going on for several years.
But your discernment of this makes it different. Huh?
We like this. I mean, I like it. And I want to say that federal judges, they do what they do with federal cases. But we got to talk about what's happening in Georgia. How are the judges that are on the bench, Supreme Court of Georgia, the Court of Appeals of Georgia, how do those judges, because that's where our cases ultimately end up. If we have an appeal, they end up with the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court of Georgia, who are the ultimate arbiters of what the law is, and they make the law in Georgia. So while the federal bench does what the federal bench does with those federal crimes, we're dealing day to day with the crimes that are happening here in Georgia.
And so, if I could, tagging on to that, there is also the criminal justice reform that is moving forward, that has moved forward since this governor has been in place. He has put forward commissions that have restructured our juvenile court. And because both of us were juvenile court judges, we can tell you that the new juvenile court law is absolutely what this state needed. It helps kids not linger in foster care. It helps those kids that should not be in jail get out of jail. It helps figure out how that looks across the state, because now those timelines are standardized. They aren't depending on what county you live in and what your judge wants to do. There are timelines that are set by statute, which gives every child in the 159 counties an opportunity to be treated fairly. This governor has not moved so much on civil justice reform, but those are the things that are coming down the pike. And magistrate court is a place where civil justice reform can be seen best, because we do small claims cases less than 15,000. We do garnishment cases. We do landlord-tenant cases. So when there are civil cases, heavy volume civil cases, they're going to occur in magistrate court, and they need to occur quickly. The only way that can happen is for all of the magistrate judges and all of the judges in the other courts to figure out what civil justice reform looks like and figure out how much we really want to help people.
Before we move on, I'd like for you all to do a little campaigning here. Why would I reelect you? How do you make a difference? And then I want to ask you why you, as a citizen, as a colleague, vote for her. Well, what do you do to make a difference? Why do I want you back there?
So since 2014, as I mentioned, there was legislation that created the court in its current form. And so what I have done when I came in 2015, the first thing I did was assess the business practices. How is this court running? What does it look like in terms of our money? And what I found out was the court was not running efficiently. The court wasn't taking care of its cases. So in 2016, when I appointed Kathleen Tina Robinson to be our clerk of court for the magistrate court, what we learned is there were 30,000 open small claims case. So that's 30,000 cases where people didn't know what the outcome of their cases were. Cases had been lingering. Cases were not correctly docketed. And so in 2 years, what we did was close all those cases. We figured out where people should have been. We called in judges. We put them on the bench. And we figured out, using our interns actually, what cases needed hearings and what cases simply needed closing. So that's the first thing that I did. The other thing that we did was we talked about the appointment process of judges. I brought in outsiders to help me evaluate the judges. Surely the burden was on me to do so, but I wanted the citizens, other citizens, to help me pick those people that would judge people in magistrate court. So that was one of the things. A big piece of what I did was also to create a website for the court that was user-friendly, something that would invite people to use it. So it's the first one we've had. It is created so that there are frequently asked questions. Sometimes you go to a website and you're like, what is a garnishment? You can go to the website and figure it out. We have worked as a magistrate council on a guide and file system so that when our county we were the first county in the magistrate courts that actually did a civil e-filing. So when we went to that, we were able to use information from the magistrate council to do a guide and file system. And so it's like TurboTax for your taxes, but it's for our legal cases. The other thing that I have done I'm most proud about is our court won a grant from the National Center for State Courts. We were one of 4 courts nationwide that won this grant to simplify our high volume courts. And so I have done a lot. That's just a little bit about the things that I have done. I have restructured the court. We have an order of business. We have time off for the judges that's planned so that we know when we are in recertification, we don't need citizens coming and sitting and having their cases continued because we won't be there.
Judge Dallas, you're sitting in a similar position, but why would I want to vote for her? Why should I even care that she's a black woman sitting in that position?
Because I think what's important is what Judge Kirk just outlined to you, the amazing strides that she's made in Fulton County in the magistrate court. And I believe before you got there was a whole different structure of magistrate court, wasn't there? There was. So what she's done, and just amazingly in 2 years, has restructured the court to make it more user-friendly. And it's amazing because people don't see how much you do. And when you're campaigning, I don't think you see how much you do until you're campaigning. And then for some reason, you're forced to kind of condense everything and come up with just to spit it off and say, this is what I've done, this is what I've done. And so I've known Judge Kirk for almost 20 years. And I've known her to be a woman of integrity, a woman of an ethical woman, compassion, and we work well together. And why would you break something or try to fix something that's not broken? It's already working.
We hear so much about the power, the judicial power. We also hear of judicial corruption. What's to prevent you guys from being approached or corrupted by money, by greed, by whatever, outside forces? And I'm sure you're approached.
The fear of being brought before
each other.
Yes.
Also, the other thing, though, is we're both women of faith. And so when you know to whom you belong, there's only so much you're going to allow
That's
someone
good.
to push you to
That's
do.
good.
And so that is one thing that we know because we have prayed together over interviews. We have prayed together over a lot. Like we go back. And so having a faith and knowing that you belong to something greater than what's walking here helps get you on the right path.
And let me say something about that, and I'm glad you said that. As women of faith, understand something. When someone is in our court, it's not just based on the law, how we rule. It's based on something else that drives us. It's what am I supposed to do as a woman of God? What am I supposed to do to show mercy, to show grace?
And that really happens?
Absolutely.
That's not
Absolutely.
just words?
No, absolutely. If you ask anyone who comes into Clayton County, I pay attention. I listen to everyone who comes in that court. And what I try to assess is what is it that I can do to make sure you don't come back in front of me. And I'll say that to individuals that are broken, because that's why people come into court, because they're broken, because of broken relationships, because of broken faith, because of broken hope. And they come in court because they're trying to do something. And I believe they come to court as a place of first. Their first resort is a court. And if we can stop them at that place, if we can pay attention and discern what it is and what they need, then we're doing what we've been called to do. So this is not a job. You said something about power.
Yes.
And I want to say to you this, it's not about power, because power doesn't belong to us. As long as you know power belongs to God, and all I am is a servant, and all I'm supposed to do is pay attention to what
Amen.
God has called me to
Amen.
do, I have no power, because it's not about me. I'm not in this position because I want power. I'm in a position because I understand where my power comes from
And the
who
importance of
I owe
serving, right.
my service to.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said.
Now, you kind of took my words away, but there are those who suggest judges have abused their power and filled our jails. There are those who suggest in your county that your sheriff uses and some allege abuses his power. So there is concern about judicial overstepping. Is that discernment you use to correct that?
You know, I think that physician, heal thyself. I believe we have to be accountable first to God. And I can't I can say this to you about the sheriff in Clayton County. That sheriff cares about the citizens in Clayton County. All right. He is always available. He's always vigilant. He's always watchful. He is always making sure that we're safe. And I have personal experience myself from something that happened to me where he was Johnny on the spot and made sure that I was protected. And I know specifically individuals who have had problems with drugs. They call the sheriff and he sends his people out to the community until there is some semblance of safety restored. So that's what I'll say about the sheriff. And about other judges that may fall off, I don't know that many. I don't know any in Clayton County. And I think we all feel the same way. I'm terrified at the thought of coming before the JQC, which is the Judicial Qualification Commission, and there's an oversight that they pay to judges. And all it takes is someone filing a complaint, and now you're under the spectrum, and now you're under scrutiny, and you're being investigated. That's real.
Well, Judge Kirk, there's a group called Gideon's Promise that fights hard every day with public defenders to keep indigent folks out of jail just because they don't have the money. Is that a problem preventing those who don't have from being incarcerated because of their lack of funds?
And so going back to the criminal justice reform, that is something that the state is looking at, but it's also something the city of Atlanta has already passed their misdemeanor bail reform. Fulton County is looking at passing something similar in terms of misdemeanor bail reform. We don't want to jail those because they are too poor to pay, and we don't want to jail those with mental illness simply because they have mental illness. And so we as a county need to figure out where that line is, because the truth is officers can write citations, but the problem is the court can't tell the officer what to do. And if the officer makes an arrest warrant, the only thing we can do is assess that defendant at first appearance and make a determination, first off, that it's still a citizen. They just happen to be on the wrong side today. And that we need to figure out if this is someone that's a danger, someone that's not coming back, or someone that we can release on a lesser level to allow them to return to their families, because you don't want people losing their job.
But that's a lot of pressure. I mean, you got somebody's life, future,
You do.
family in your hands every day. You see them for the first time. Isn't that tough?
It is tough.
Isn't that draining?
And I want to add something too, that our legislators have addressed the whole bail issue under House Bill 407, and that was just passed, waiting for the governor to sign that in July. And that's a House bill that presupposes that we have to look at individuals based on their ability to, not based on their ability to pay, but or based on their inability to pay. So we've got to use some different parameters and different, I guess, factors in posting a bail. So that's something that the state legislature has looked at in addition to the city of Atlanta. And that's exciting when you see things like that, because now that gives judges discretion. It gives us an ability under a bill to look at factors other than, trying to penalize someone on some levels who cannot afford to pay to post a bond.
We hear a lot about sex trafficking, especially in Fulton County and Clayton County. We hear a lot about the Me Too movement. We've heard a lot about the Bill Cosby's. How does that play out in your courts? Sexual assaults.
I want to talk about something, and it's a burden when we talk about our young people and sexual assaults. There seems to be an increase in the level of sexual assaults that are happening with our young people. And a lot of this has to do with cyberbullying. A lot of this has to do with social media. And so what's happening now, and I want to say this, it's important for young people to understand something. If you transmit a picture, a video of a child, if you're under 18 rather, and you transmit a video, there is a law. It is a misdemeanor to transmit a video of someone that is under the age of 14. If you're under the age of 18, it's a misdemeanor offense now. And that's something young people don't seem to understand. They're using their cell phones. They're using social media. And they're using these things as weapons against other children. Suppose a young lady is in a relationship with a young man, and he takes a video of her. If he sends that to anyone else, it is a crime. You understand that? Young people don't seem to understand that. And we've got to talk about this. And this is something that I'm trying to, as former juvenile court judges, our children are our passion. Young people are our passion. Cyberbullying is happening all the time. So we've got to pay attention to what's happening to our children. Do you understand that? What is happening to our children? I see young people in my court that have threatened to kill someone. They sent a text, "I'm going to kill you." Do you know that's a terroristic threat? That is a felony. And now there's evidence of this felony by virtue of them taking a picture of the log that you send. So young people don't seem to be aware, and that's what we've got.
And it stays with them, does it not? I mean, this doesn't go away.
It does not go away. As a matter of fact, they'll try to erase this off of their cell phone, and there's an ability to pull these images back. It never goes away.
I want to hear what your thoughts about this, Judge.
So specifically what I was thinking is that those things that make Atlanta great, like we get the Final Four, we get the Super Bowl, all those things that make Atlanta great are the exact same things that make children vulnerable. And Atlanta DFACS has, or Fulton County DFACS particularly, has a lot of children in care. Sometimes those children run. Within 48 hours of those children running and being on the street, there's a chance, there's a strong possibility that they will be picked up and groomed by someone who is going to use them as you would use simply a tool. Use them like you order pizza. There is a strong possibility that when people come, business people come from outside, that they will figure out that they want to do something that is so heinous they wouldn't do it in their own city, but they would come to Atlanta and do it. And because we are a convention city and everybody in Atlanta, it's the South, we want to please, we make way for those people. And it's, when the last study that was done was when Nina Hickson, Judge Hickson, was on the bench, and she wrote an article in Atlanta Journal-Constitution and said that she had just had her 1,000th case of prostitution in juvenile court. It was then that churches rallied around the victims of sex trafficking. They rallied around those men that had been part of that demand for sex trafficking in a way to figure out how we can make that stop. I am on the board of Street Grace, which is on the in-demand side of this issue, and what we are finding is that it starts from like simple pornography. It starts and then it moves into the strip clubs, and so it's something that people are groomed into believing is okay, but it turns out to be something so incredibly insidious.
And how do you deal with that when you see it in your courtroom? Does your being there make a difference? How do you change that? Or do you just deal with the swamp of things that come at you?
Well, so I'm happy to say that from the time that Judge Hickson was on the juvenile court bench, our police officers had been trained in such a way that they understood they could not bring a 14-year-old and charge her with prostitution, because at 14 you can't consent to having sex. So it's an awareness issue. It's an awareness on the part of the police and increased awareness on the part of the court. So the number of victims being brought in, as well as the laws that support support those victims have changed in order for us really to be able to help victims and not continue to punish them, which is what had been happening. Um,
And let me say something else. And I know that Judge Kirk does this, and I do this as well. I visit the high schools in Clayton
Do
County.
you?
Yes. And I let the young, and I will give them the worst example of a case that has come in front of me. An example of a young girl
So
who
you go to schools and,
I go
and
to the
lecture
high
and
schools.
scold?
I go to the high schools and I talk to the students and I let them know these are the cases that I see. This is a young lady who was in the parking lot of Krispy Kreme who was taken out of her mother's car. This young lady was on her way home from school and was taken off the street. This young man came to Atlanta from South Carolina because he thought that he could have a better life here, and they turned this young man into a prostitute. I tell them about these stories because the only way that our young people, you see, we have laws to prosecute the men, but we don't protect our children. And the only way our children can be protected is if they know what is out there. And I'm very straight with them. I say, let me tell you what's going on. And so when we go to the high schools, we educate the children, then they're more aware. And then the young men think, well, I'm not going to be a victim. And I say, yes, you can be. So it's important that they understand about what's going on in Georgia with sex trafficking.
Are you concerned? We have all this on the internet. We have all. I teach college classes. I have to hear this stuff. It's alarming to me. But you see it in the courtroom. Are the problems getting worse? And can they be curbed by the judicial system? Or are you just traffic cops?
We're not traffic cops.
I think we
We're
have an opportunity
mamas.
to intervene. So I think we have an opportunity to intervene, and I think it's important for judges to be able to assess cases with the help of the prosecution, with the help of the defense, and to be able to say, this is a case of someone that deserves a second chance. This is a case of someone that had a bad day. And so sometimes good people do bad stuff. Everyone's not terrorizing us. There are some people that absolutely deserve, or for the safety of the community, should not be released. And if they are in fact found guilty, they should be moved quickly to the next level. The problem in Fulton County is we have defendants that are sitting in jail waiting on trials.
We
Same
don't
with you?
have that, no. We don't have that same problem in Clayton County. It's a faster move in Clayton County, but I worked in Fulton County.
The backlog because there's so many cases?
I'm
or
running for
just
election. Did they tell you I was running for election?
Yeah, you can't.
Right.
Okay, I got you. That's what I said. Certain things you can't talk about. Right? Finally, ladies, before we tell me why my daughter should care if you're a magistrate judge, or my sister should care if you're a magistrate judge. What difference does it make?
Wow, we make a big difference. When people come into magistrate court, and we're the first court that they come into, and they have someone that cares about them, they have someone that's trying to assess whether or not this is the mistake that they made, if they just need some redirection, if they need some support, if they need some type of a treatment program, you can make a difference. Magistrate court judges make a difference. And I think we started off talking about women and women in the court system, and I think inherently the same thing that makes us mothers and aunts and wives, the same quality that makes us good at those positions is what makes us good at this. We have compassion, we care, and we believe in second chances. But now let me tell you something. You know how you messed up with your mother?
Oh, well, I
We'll
know.
fuss too. So there's a strictness, but there's also this level of concern and care.
Empathy.
And empathy, that's a great word.
Just,
So I think for us, having come through various different legal experiences and not just only serving on this bench, having also served on a juvenile court bench, we have seen how different systems function. And so just as the juvenile court system, what the purpose was rehabilitation, what we can bring as judges that have sat in other courts and had different legal experience is our legal experience. So don't get confused that all we are is warm and fuzzy. We are both incredibly intelligent. Judge Dallas is a student of the law. If there is ever a question at a magistrate court council meeting, she is on it. So we are astute in terms of the law, but we are also able to look and see people, and I think that's the difference. People in magistrate court deserve to be seen. A lot of times people are not seen, and I think that's something that we bring.
ladies, I can end this, but how enlightening and educational and even entertaining, but how important you are. Thank you so much for joining us in Newsmakers.
Thank you for having us.
Go on. Well, again, another Newsmakers, another informative night of information. The thing about magistrate court is that's where all the basic issues of everyday life are adjudicated initially. We find that without ladies who understand our communities, especially those who have to deal with our children and the issues that initially affect our children, without that level of understanding, justice would still be not found by our community. We thank you for your service. We thank you for what you do every day for every child in this city and every household in this city. I have seen how unevenly justice can be applied at the magistrate level many, many times. Without these ladies, we wouldn't have that. This one is up for election, and I want you to know that Newsmakers is silently behind her re-election. And we want her to win. So we want all of you people who subscribe, all 7,000 of you, to remember that this is our candidate, Cassandra Kirk. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out. This has been Newsmakers.
Newsmakers Live, now in its 10th season, salutes the Superwomen of Georgia. The women of Atlanta and all of Georgia are creating positive change in business, politics, and the civic influence of our communities. Join us each Monday evening here at Newsmakers Live as we salute the magic of these women and their contributions to our daily lives. And now, from BQE Restaurant and Lounge in the heart of Atlanta's historic Auburn Avenue district, here is your Newsmakers host, 8-time Emmy Award-winning journalist,